this meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Open forum. We have the list. Jeff. And like I said, everybody just, reasonable time frame for everybody to speak.
You hear me? Okay. In the matter of the item of declaring a historic district in Melrose, I'd like to say this much. I would strongly recommend the City Council to consider establishing an historic district in the block containing St. Mary's Church and the adjoining rectory. These two buildings are already on the National Registry of Historic Places, and it would seem to me that it would be comparatively easy to have the whole block declared as an historic district. Religious controversies aside, and considering the disastrous fire that destroyed half the 400 block of Main Street, the city of Melrose has very few historic buildings left. By contrast, surrounding nearby communities seem to have managed to establish and maintain their historic districts quite well. To name a few, almost within sight of Melrose are Minnesota Homeschool for Girls. It's on the historic registry. The original Main Street, Sauk Center, is also on the historic registry. It stretches for 10 blocks along Main Street in downtown Sauk Center. St. Benedict's Convent and College Historic District. 14 buildings, 2 other structures, and 5 objects built between 1882 and late 1920s on the National Historic Registry. The St. Cloud Commercial Historic District. Designation applied to the historic downtown of St. Cloud. It comprises of 41 contributing properties built between 1870 and 1947. The Fifth Avenue Commercial Buildings comprises a row of 6 buildings in St. Cloud, also on the National Historic Registry. And also the Stearns County Courthouse, seat of government of Stearns County in St. Cloud. Okay, also on the National Historic Registry. So if you go on the internet, you'll find all the places in Stearns County that are on the National Registry of Historic Places, including many Catholic churches. So in spite of his Honor Judge Frank Kundrat's opinion, it doesn't appear that government, whether federal, state, or municipal, interfering with the practice of religion applies here. So I urgently recommend that you will proceed with the plan using option 1 or 2 as stated in the agenda, or a combination of the two to establish a historic district to honor the community, past, present, and future. I think it's definitely your moral and civic duty. Thank you.
Mickey? Oh, okay. Tim Volkel.
I'm probably a little bit better speaking on the microphone than Jesse is. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. On behalf of the citizens of Melrose and the Restore Group, every community has a very unique entity that gives its own town, cities, and their identity. Drive around the countryside and over the horizon you will see church steeples. A geographical marker, if you will. It gives one the sense of where you are and where you're going, especially in Stearns County. We all know that St. Mary's Parish, we all know that what St. Mary's Church means to this parish, or at least we thought we did. But let's now focus on the building, what the building means to our town. what it meant to our ancestors, and what it truly means to our heritage here in Melrose. There's a reason that this building is on the National Historic Registry. The craftsmanship, the architecture are not duplicated in these modern days. The building is a beacon of this community and has been the one true identity that this town has for well over 100 years. People pull off the interstate to take a look at this marvel. We're asking that the council place a moratorium on any demolition or dismantling of the structure and research the idea of creating a historical district. This is being done for many communities throughout the country. The whole French Quarter in New Orleans is a perfect example. The council has the authority to do so, but more importantly, it has a moral obligation to preserve and protect the last remaining structure that truly gives identity to this community. To let a historical building fall to its demise will be the one defining moment of sorrow this whole community will grieve for a long time. And we as a community cannot let this happen. There's a quote out there that says, "A town without old buildings is like a man without a memory." This council has the authority to create this district, but does it have the will? Thank you.
Jim Jackson.
I'll be quick. Basically, what I want to do is get on the agenda so we can discuss it for the next council meeting. What I'm after is I believe, an illegal puppy mill just across the street from me that's been going on for 5 years now. And they continually raise puppies, pit bulls, not that I have anything against them. But just as soon as 3 months comes up, those puppies are gone. Now, I don't know where they go, but I have suspicion, but I don't know the fact. As soon as those are gone, a new batch comes up. And this has been going on, like I say, continually for 5 years. I don't know what we can do about it. I've been told it's possibly illegal. I hope it's illegal because that makes it easier to take care of. These dogs yap, I will say, off and on during the day. During the night, sometimes I've had them awake as 2 o'clock in the morning. They don't go for a long time. They bring them in, they're gone maybe 20 minutes, and they're back inside again. And to my knowledge, they live inside the house, which I don't think is very sanitary for whoever's living there or whatever. But anyway, all I really want to do is just get on the meeting for the next agenda so we can discuss it further and see what we can do about it. Thank you.
Mayor Ficken and members of the City Council of Melrose. I appreciate the opportunity to offer some clarification regarding the Church of St. Mary of Melrose opposition to the agenda item regarding the moratorium and historic district designation of Block 32 containing the fire-damaged church structure. I would first like to read the second paragraph of the November 14th, 2018 letter I addressed to you, Mayor Ficken, which I believe was copied to all the members of the City Council. I hope it will bring some clarification regarding our concern.
That's the letter you got yesterday.
So in that letter I wrote, the fire damaged structure, because it was used for Catholic public worship, falls under the governance of the diocesan bishop. Bishop Kettler has decreed that the fire-damaged structure is to no longer be used for public worship and is to be taken down. Since all the members of St. Mary's, including me as pastor, are obligated by the laws of the church to follow the orders of the diocesan bishop, in this case, Bishop Kettler. The St. Mary's trustees, the St. Mary's Parish Council, and the St. Mary's Finance Council are in the process of carrying out Bishop Kettler's decree. For this reason, the Church of St. Mary of Melrose objects to and is opposed to any moratorium for the establishment of a historic district that restricts the demolition of the fire-damaged structure or controls how the church uses its property. We ask that the City Council deny the request submitted by the Restore Group for a moratorium and decline to create a historic district designation because we believe such action would violate the freedom of the practice of religion protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. That's end of quoting from that letter. I think it needs to be made clear that only bishops in the Catholic Church can create law within the church. This teaching is grounded in our declaration of faith we profess every Sunday at Mass, when, while reciting the Nicene Creed, we profess the church to be apostolic. The meaning of the word apostolic is defined and explained in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. The section titled, "The Bishops, Successors of the Apostles," reads as follows. Just as the office which the Lord confided to Peter alone as first of the apostles, destined to be transmitted to his successors, is a permanent one, so also endures the office which the apostles received of shepherding the church, a charge destined to be exercised without interruption by the sacred order of bishops. Hence, the church teaches that bishops have by divine institution taken the place of the apostles as pastors of the church, in such wise that whoever listens to them is listening to Christ, and whoever despises them despises Christ and him who sent Christ. End of quote from the Catholic Catechism. This doctrine of the Catholic Church, among many others, is protected, as I stated earlier, by the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. And it was made clear in the recent court decision involving the Friends to Restore St. Mary and the Church of St. Mary of Melrose. As a fourth point, such an action appears to be contrary to the recently signed church-city abatement agreement. We also believe such an action would create more strife than healing, which is contrary to the goals of current parish leadership. If litigation were to ensue, it is hard to imagine the feeling of those not Catholic, much less those who are Catholic, using tax dollars to litigate a situation pertaining to the Catholic Church. I deeply appreciate, Mayor Finken, your attempt to bring this issue to a peaceful resolution. I commend you for taking those steps in that regard. I hope the members of the City Council would support you in this regard. I believe the healing of this community needs to begin with its leadership. I pray that we can work together to bring unity to the community of Melrose. Finally, I request my letter of November 14th, 2018, addressed to you, Mayor Finken, and shared with the members of the City Council, that it be entered into the public record for this meeting, since it contains other pertinent points of interest regarding this matter. Thank you, Mayor Finken, and thank you, members of the City Council.
Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to speak at the open forum? Okay. All right, we are at the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes, approval of the bills, purchase orders, investments, donation resolution, 2018-54, $500 from the Holding Forward Fire Relief to the Melrose Ambulance Department for training expenses. And then resolution number 2018-55, donation of $500 from the Melrose Lions to the Melrose Area Chamber of Commerce for the holiday kickoff. And there's a police officer step increase and Parks and Trail grant. Can I get a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
First and second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We are on to reports. General Fund Quarterly. Tessa.
Good evening, Mayor and the Council. For our third quarter report for the city, the general fund is running lower on revenues as we typically are. Our property taxes and our local government aid make up about 72% of our budget, and the second half of those is received in December. Overall, expenses are running slightly lower as well. Our insurance expense is running under budget, and our miscellaneous expenses are slightly higher because of the cleanup costs still remaining from the 2017 windstorm that we had. For our MATA fund, expenses are higher than we had originally budgeted, and that's due to consulting and grant applications for the pedestrian and bike study, as well as the SCDP grant. We will be receiving some reimbursements from those, but we haven't received it from all sources yet. For the city ambulance fund, revenues are already at 90% of budget. It's been another very busy year for our ambulance department. With that, expenditures are at 72%, but a large portion of those for the administrative fees as well as the rent for the ambulance hall is done at year end. The fire fund doesn't typically have a lot of activity through the year. The townships pay their contract fees in December, as well as the city making our transfer to the fire department in December. And they also pay their rent payments and administrative fees then. Our special revenue funds are the senior center. We have a TRICAP fund and the Yellow Bike program. Those are basically just any revenues coming in for those, such as bus tokens or miscellaneous contributions or donations, and then the corresponding expenses, what those are to be called for. And our capital projects funds, it's been a busy summer, so you'll see there's a big shift from our second quarter report to today. The street projects had a lot of the expenses incurred with the first street project. We also had received some payments from the state of Minnesota through the legislature that we had for the first street project, and that was approximately $300,000. We also received some reimbursement for a sidewalk from an industry partner. Expenses that were a little higher was a TIF fund was decertified early, and so we had an early payout of those costs, so that ran over budget. And as far as our debt service fund, 100% of the expenditures have been met. We've paid all of our principal and interest payments for the year. As we mentioned earlier, we still have one bond for another year, and then we'll be down one. And the second portion of the taxes will also be received in December for those. So we're wrapping up the end of the year already. It's like we're just here. Does anybody have any questions on any of the finances?
Okay. Good. All right. Thank you, Tessa. Chief Mouse?
Good evening. Reading our October 2018 report, in our traffic area, 27 citations were issued, 147 verbal warnings, 1 written warning. For October 2018, we ended with 441 calls or requests for service. Last year, we were at 329, so we have 112 calls or request increase from last year. October 17, we had ICR 2943 was our ending number, and this year we're at 4429, so we're almost 1,500 calls or requests for service over last year at this point. We're on track to clear 5,000 calls or requests for service, which will exceed our biggest number is probably by about 1,500 or so. It's been an extremely busy year for us. 39 agency assists. A chunk of those were within the city limits, assisting with warrants and things like that, but we did leave town quite a bit. Stock Centers had an unusual amount of activity over there for October. A lot of things related to fighting, violence, and domestic abuse situations, and we've been backing them up until things can get controlled and we come back to town. So, with our double coverage that we have going on now with the 5-officer situation, we do have the ability then to keep one officer back to cover the town. So, it's been a big benefit for us. Some areas just to highlight for November. November 20th at 7 p.m. at the auditorium at Melrose High School, we're having a human trafficking presentation related to people being trafficked for labor purposes as well as sexual exploitation. So it's open to the public to attend. Anybody's open to come. That's put on by the Melrose Cluster. Knights of Columbus is putting money towards that, so it's greatly appreciated. Update the council. Commercial property that is under your abatement order will expire November 25th. No movement on that at this point. When that comes through or does not come through, we'll be working with Scott Demick as far as any court action that's necessary. Parking. Carol and I sat down today and did our weekly news report for the police department. We had 35 overall written warnings issued for 24-hour parking. We want people to realize, obviously we had an earlier snowfall than normal. We want people to get their vehicles off the streets within 24 hours. So our street crews can clean things up. It makes it safer for everybody else, as well as we don't get into that habit for the remainder of the winter. So it's the majority of it. Any questions?
Is that published in the paper, that parking thing too?
Yeah, Carol and I counted them out, and I believe she added that portion in as far as the number of written warnings we had. A couple of them did go to administrative citations, but I think that was 6 out of 35 or 36 of them, and most of those have been moved or paid already as well. So.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean just to notify the people that, you know, the 24-hour parking should be enforced. Or
Yeah, if it
what.
wasn't put in there in whatever way Carol put it in, we can throw another splash in there.
Can't hurt.
Right. We added it to our Facebook page as well to spread it that way. So. Okay.
And begin. Scott?
Yeah, I've got just a couple things on the report. The first one, there's referencing St. Mary's and the cup and variance applications the council approved last meeting. My report gets submitted about a week before the council meeting. And periodically, things happen on projects between when I submit the report and when your meeting is. So that's really a reference to some items that occurred after my last report went out, but was addressed at your last meeting. Also, and this is coming up later, is the charter cable franchise. That's something that Mike and I have been working on for a year. We have 2 cable franchises with Charter and Arvig. Charters was up last year. We've been extending it while we negotiate a new agreement. Because we have 2 cable companies in town, the way we've structured it is that we have an ordinance that really has the body of the requirements, and then we have an agreement that talks about the terms, and a lot of it in portions it almost duplicates the ordinance. And the reason we do that is that we have an obligation to make sure that we treat all the companies even-handedly, that we can't show favoritism to either one. So by having the regulations in place, that assures that neither company can come back and complain that they're being treated unfairly, because that essentially gets incorporated into their agreements. So we do have a new franchise agreement for the council to review. We've also got an update on the cable, the ordinance with the regulations for you to review and approve. We thought while we're there, we should review those and make sure that that gets updated and is current, because think the last time we looked at them was 15 years ago when we were renewing cable franchise agreements. These agreements run for 15 years, and the world of cable television and communications looks a little different now than it did back in 2002, 2003. So we want to get that current. That's all I've got in my report, unless you have any questions. Thank you.
That's good. All right, thank you. Lisa?
The Planning Commission met on November 5th. There's several items on your agenda tonight related to that, including ARS conditional use permit and variance and the sign ordinance. The next meeting will be December 3rd. We anticipate the street capital improvement plan, a set of applications from Proliant and Land O'Lakes regarding some lot line readjustments that they're doing, and a series of ordinance amendments related to landscaping, parking lot setbacks, headlights, screening, and such. We've had about 10 building permits issued since the last council meeting, several re-roofs, a new home we discussed in the last meeting. Carson's started their addition. Melrose Dairy Proteins did a sprinkler. St. Mary's School is remodeling a locker room into a kitchen facility, and there's a plumbing permit for Burger King. Casey's is in the final stages prior to getting their building permit issued. They're working on recording their milers. So that's all I have.
That was easy. All right. We are on action items. 6A canvass, November 6, 2018, election results.
Mr. Mayor, in accordance to state law, the city of Melrose has to canvass the election results of the last general election. At the beginning of the election, we had 1,665 registered voters. At the end of the day, we had 51 additional for a total of 1,716 registered voters in the city of Melrose. So for the winner for mayor for another term is Joe Finken at 969 votes. Council members, Travis Freeler at 699 votes, Mark Bunkerhill at 585 votes. The city council hereby has to canvass these results by passing the resolution as attached. Pending your questions.
Okay. Is there any questions? I'd like to welcome you two on to the city council. Excited for the new crew to make this town better. And for the 42 people that didn't vote for me, and especially the one that said for anybody else but Joe, I hope I can earn your trust for the next 4 years to do the best job that I can for the community. So, can I get a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I think that was your wife, wasn't it?
I know it was. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And also, just, we'll talk next month again, but thank you, Dick, for 8 years of service to the community. You are definitely going to be missed.
There you go. Thank you. I did my best.
You're not done yet.
Oh.
All right, 6B, council member appointment.
The Melrose City Council declared a vacancy of the Melrose City Council after the resignation of Josh T. Schaefer. Mr. T. Schaefer moved outside the city limits, therefore he had to give up his rights to the council. The council at their October 18th meeting declared that the winner of the council elections with the most majority votes would be nominated and subsequently appointed to fill out the remaining term. That person is Travis Freeler. Travis Freeler's in the audience this evening. So we would ask Mr. Freeler to come forward and to accept an oath of office for a 2-month term, and then at their January meeting, we'll do it all over again. So, why don't you come on forward?
What do you want?
Oh, right, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
So provide consideration to appoint Mr. Freeler.
Can I get a motion to approve?
So move.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
So what we'll do is just raise your right hand and repeat after me. So I, Travis Freeler, do solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States,
I, Travis Freeler, do solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and to discharge faithfully the duties of the office of council member of the city of Melrose, Minnesota,
and to discharge faithfully the duties of the office of council member of the City of Melrose, Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability, so help me God.
to the best of my judgment and ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, Stearns County Mutual Aid Agreement, Resolution Number 2018-57, approving the Stearns County Mutual Aid Agreement use for fire personnel and equipment.
Chief, you want to stand and just give a quick little short summary?
Good evening, Council, Mayor. What you guys got in front of you is a adoption that all the Stearns County fire departments are looking to get approved by their council. Basically, it's same thing as what our statewide mutual aid agreement is, that the only difference with this is this will give us the ability to charge departments after so many hours of service. So allows us to recoup some of our cost.
Okay. Do we have any questions, concerns?
So, Mr. Mayor, there's two things that we need to adopt here this evening. One is adopt the mutual aid agreement, and then adopt Resolution 2018-57, which allows the mayor and the city administrator to sign.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve in action 1, please?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
First and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Action 2, provide consideration to adopt resolution number 2018-57. Can I get a motion to approve?
So move.
A second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. D, the fire department brush truck.
Yeah, I was back here in October, I believe it was, September, October, and you guys gave us the go-ahead to go look for bids for a new brush truck. We have an 84 that we're looking to replace. And at that same time, I mentioned that I applied for a grant with the DNR to be able to see if we could pick up one of their pickup trucks. Well, just about a month ago, I got a call from those guys saying we have a 2009 Chevy Duramax one-ton pickup truck that is available, $12,000. Obviously, we have to do some repair work to it and paint it to the red color versus the nice bright yellow color that's on it. But if you fix up things, I'm guessing $25,000 is about what we're looking to spend on this. The original bid when we would have went to a brand new truck would have been about $50,000. So this is saving us quite a bit of money to go this route. We have purchased these trucks before. One of our tankers that we have in the hall right now is a DNR truck. It served us well. Also, I believe in your packet, we included the maintenance report that the DNR sent as well. They check it over. They do a good job with their repair work. So we have no problem, no issues with this truck at all. So what I'm coming here tonight to get your guys' approval is for us to purchase that truck, and then we'll get it fixed up with the way we need it and serve our needs. Questions?
These are four-wheel drive trucks, I would assume?
That is correct. This is a four-wheel drive pickup truck. Like I said, a one-ton. The one truck that we've got right now is only a 3/4 ton. So we plan to put on potentially up to a 200-gallon tank in the back end to help with the brush fires and get a pump to service it as well. So.
Yeah. And the remaining money that we will save is going to remain in the set-aside fund for, future truck purchases, correct?
Correct, yes. So we've scheduling out our equipment. Hopefully we can go a little longer, but we do have a tanker that needs to be replaced here in the near future. And so the reserve that we're saving on this truck will stay in the truck fund and help support. As you all know, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, we got hit with a expense that one of our trucks on 94 got hit and we totaled. We had to spend about $60,000 that we weren't expecting to. So this will help help the budget immensely.
Good. Thank you. All right, is there any other questions? Can I get a motion to approve?
So move. Second.
Okay, first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, resolution number 2018-50, resolution with Joe Arsenal.
So we'll do the variances first. Ars Auto has requested a setback variance for the parking for 3 feet from the property line. The property line is approximately 8.5 feet north of the curb, and there's a 6-foot sidewalk covering all but 1 to 2.5 feet of the city right-of-way north of the curb. So with the 3-foot setback, there'd be about a 4 to 5.5 foot of separation from the path to the curb. The Planning Commission considered this. They reviewed all the standards for granting variances, and they found that there were 2 standards that could not be met in their opinion, and they recommended denial, which is the resolution that is before you tonight.
Lisa, could you also just touch on the alternative that they proposed for the ordinance that'll be on the council in the coming months?
There was some discussion of modification of the ordinance regarding the east property line, not the south property line, which would allow some encroachment on that side because of the existing grass that's already in the county right-of-way, and because the county right-of-way is pretty wide. It's actually about 100 feet wide there, so.
Okay. Then we're gonna work on that next month, right? The other one?
That is scheduled for next month.
Next
yes.
month then,
Mhm.
okay.
And then I can go over the conditional use permit now if you'd like, or do you want to make a motion on the resolution for the?
Should we make that resolution first and then go through there?
Sure.
Okay. So then, for the resolution to deny this right now, can I get a motion to approve
And that's for the variance.
for the variance?
For the motion.
Okay, and a first and a second. Do we got a second?
I'll second.
Okay. First and a second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now, go ahead.
Okay, next is the conditional use permit for Ars Auto. They've done some changes since their initial approvals. There's 2 existing conditional use permits, one for the auto sales and one for auto repair. And there've been some changes just over time, and they've relocated the area that they have their auto sales display from the south property line to the east property line. Currently, it's not paved. They are planning to pave that area. But the conditional use permit needs to be amended just to sort of encompass all of the changes that have happened over time. And so that is recommended for approval. The resolution is provided for you, and there are conditions attached to that resolution.
Okay. Can you get a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Then, next month, we're gonna come back with that other one, right?
Yes.
Okay. Help Joe out, okay. All right, Charters franchise ordinance.
So I can just touch on that quickly here. Mr. Demick has already given you an update on that. We have come to terms with Charter in regards to the ordinance modifications. We will be using that as our base document for all future franchises. We cleaned that up a little bit in regards to the renewal clauses and addressed all that. So you have a copy of that, which was forwarded on to you. We also have the revised contract itself. So the city would need to, staff is recommending that you do 3 actions this evening. One is to provide consideration to amend the franchise agreement with Charter Communication as presented.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve?
So move.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Mayor and Council, our intent is that when Arvid Communication comes up for renewal, that we would use this as our template as well. The next item that we have for you is the actual ordinance, which is significantly longer than what we had before. So we are also recommending that you would adopt a summary ordinance. So Our first action is to provide consideration to adopt the ordinance as presented.
Motion to approve.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
We would also ask for consideration to approve the summary ordinance, which is just a shorter version of the full ordinance. If somebody wants to see the full ordinance, please contact city staff, and it'll be posted here at the city center. We do need a supermajority, which is 4 of the 5 members, to adopt a summary ordinance.
Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a first and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried, 5-0. Okay, we're on to 6H, special legislation, fire remediation.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Council, we, over the past couple of years, we've had some significant challenges in our community, obviously, relating to our fires. The city was successful at securing $1.3 million, $1.39 million through special appropriations from the state. We were able to buy down roughly $737,000 of that appropriation. Stearns County was able to buy down roughly $11,000 of those appropriations. So in total, we've spent $748,000 on the recovery of the 400 block, First Street reconstruction, and so on. That leaves the remaining appropriations of $643,000. It's our recommendation to attempt to secure legislation this coming year to allow us to continue on with our efforts. It was in the tax bill last year. We did get the extension, however, it passed the House and the Senate, but the governor vetoed the bill twice, and so therefore we need to reapply. So it's our recommendation that we seek special legislation as outlined in the attached.
Okay.
Any work we've done to date has been reimbursed.
Yep.
According to this, okay.
Okay, any other questions? Can I get a motion to approve this, please?
So moved. I'll second.
Okay, first and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Burlington Plat 2, access easements.
Yeah, what happened here is back in roughly 1980, Burlington Northern transferred a bunch of land to the city. The city then created a plat for that land that was transferred over, and that is directly abutting the rail bank property. These lots are only about 25 feet wide. After reviewing this, we had a property owner contact us to ask for a access easement. So we looked at a couple different options of just straight up selling these lots or creating access easements. After reviewing this from the EDA board as well as the P&Z board, it's their recommendations that we just grant access easements to all of these parcels that are along the Burlington Northern plat and that trail. And that we would do that at our expense, which is about $125 a piece roughly. We're thinking, depends how much we can really get Mr. Demick to work on those numbers since he's doing them in bulk. And the reason that is, and the reason we would do that is to just clean it up. The city should have done that, I would argue, back in the 80s when this was originally created, because right now the property owners can't technically cross city property without approval. So, having said that, it's our recommendation to grant an easement, access easement to all parcels adjacent to that trail.
Is there any discussion? But at the MATA meeting, those 2 lots by Coburn's, is the Parks and Rec Board, did you throw that idea out on that we're thinking?
Yes, that will be placed on their agenda.
Okay, I'm sure it does, please. All right. Is there any questions or concerns? Can I get a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Okay, first, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, first and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Old business, bicycle pedestrian master plan.
Good evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor and council members, thank you for your time tonight. My name is Andy Hingeveld. I am a planner with WSB, and on behalf of the city and a number of partner agencies, I'm here to present the results of the bicycle and pedestrian master plan process that we have worked on over the course of a few months. So I will try to move ahead fairly quickly, so please interrupt me if you have any questions, but I would like to make sure to give recognition to the members of the community that have helped put this plan together, as well as the partner agencies, the SHIP, Statewide Health Improvement Partnership Program through the state of Minnesota, the Initiative Foundation, CentraCare Health, the Melrose School District, and the City of Melrose. And then Allison Dudek with Stearns County SHIP is in the audience tonight as well, who has been a big part of putting this plan together. So benefits of biking and walking is something that can be overlooked just once in a while. So one piece of this process is just to help remind people, get the dialogue going that in order for healthy lifestyles, healthy communities, getting people on feet and biking and walking is important, and the community and the city need to think about that as infrastructure is putting in place and all that. So, and as recreational programs are established and put together. Again, improving physical activity, promoting physical activity, supporting healthy lifestyles in communities, serving both recreational and transportation needs, and a growing population, especially the younger families, are starting to desire more walkable communities as well. So we put this master plan together to help provide a framework for the infrastructure, to help look at policies and promotional opportunities, help establish a plan or a framework for partners in the public health communities to work together, and focus on increasing walking and biking in the community, interactions with the community, making some recommendations to enhance the system, and identifying opportunities for implementation. And so these are the goals that were established as part of the planning process. Again, increasing rates of walking and biking within this community to help support active and healthy lifestyles, providing a connected network that again relates more to the physical infrastructure component, looking at the maintenance needs of that infrastructure, and providing safe and comfortable facilities for all users. So this framework is built on what's called the 6E approach: engineering, education, enforcement, encouragement, evaluation, and equity. And it's really recognizing that it's not just one component that makes a difference. We have to look at all the different pieces together and how that system really operates. So this is a map of the existing, I guess what we call the sidewalk and trail network, or the biking and walking facilities that are within Melrose. And it is a fairly good system as it is. The city built in the era that it was, you know, promotes walking, promotes biking, has a good network of sidewalks. The Lake Wobegon Regional Trail is a major asset for the community that provides great value to the residents and to bring others into the community as well. So we wanted to build upon this network, and recognizing that through other efforts, the city has developed some walking routes and some loops that are promoted and can be promoted more to recognize and help people, you know, look at, well, where can I go for a walk? Or how long is this trip going to take me? What are recreation opportunities? Or just to realize, how can I get to the grocery store if I have a short, you know, purchase or few things that we need to pick up. As part of this process, we also did some community outreach and engagement, and got a pretty good results in terms of over 200 responses through some surveys, through some face-to-face interactions, and some online interactions that were promoted through the Facebook page and some other sources. And then there was also a school tally that was done in terms of counting for how many kids actually walk to school and all that. So we have a summary here to share a few of those highlights. Overall, it seemed to demonstrate that walking is common. You know, people want to walk and support that opportunity. We'll try to do that as much as they can or when they can. However, biking does not seem to be as common, at least in terms of the respondents and the people that participated in this process. And so then the question is, well, what are those issues that may prevent people from walking or biking within Melrose? And weather in Minnesota is obviously one of those issues that comes out a lot. But there's a lot of comments about not having the facilities and the sidewalk or path in where I am walking. It's not a continuous route, and then safety and traffic. Some of those other perception issues can arise as well. So how could you improve walking and biking for people within the community? So then the response is, well, let's build more infrastructure, get those sidewalks and trails completed, improve street crossings, pedestrian crossings, look at some of those additional amenities, things like that to help support the opportunities. And then in terms of school responses, from the school tally and from the Safe House to School survey, it was demonstrated that a lot of the kids are getting to school via school bus and also getting dropped off from their families or their parents. And about 4% were shown to walk or bike based on the results that were provided in May. And again, similar question about what are the concerns of providing or allowing children to walk or bike to school, traffic, distance, safety concerns are something that is pretty common and was identified. So the overall plan that we'll present here is really trying to build upon the existing network. Again, recognizing that there is a good system in place. And the comprehensive plan that the city has, I believe the plan was adopted in 2010 or 11, has a good network for what's planned as well. So we didn't want to start from scratch and change what the direction that the city is going, but rather kind of build upon that, look at prioritizing sections, identify some more key routes, and build upon that system in a way to complete those gaps and help kind of build that implementation plan for when funds are available. These are the first projects that should be pursued, as well as just general recommendations and outlines for improving safety and walking and putting together that implementation plan. So this is what the resulting map looks like. Again, it's building upon the comprehensive plan's proposed sidewalk trail map, which is really the base here. And then the change or additional piece are these kind of greener, light blue highlighted areas that show where kind of more the framework, the backbone is of this system to help really identify if this is in place, these are the opportunities that will help connect all the neighborhoods of the community, provide access to those major destinations, and build upon those routes and loops that have been identified in the past. And then the letters that are in place that go along with the projects that were identified with a time frame to help the city consider these as they pursue forward opportunities for grants, for CIP projects, any other capital investment opportunities. So again, we're trying to build upon what has been put in place, but really identify where those key gaps and opportunities could be. And then finally, we developed a series of recommendations based upon that 6E framework. So they're all listed here, but I'll just pick a couple to kind of highlight. But for education, really regularly promoting this system, utilizing the community's existing communication resources that they have. Every once in a while, that city newsletter maybe there's an opportunity to remind people that we have these loop cards that are available that can be picked up at City Hall. You know, health benefits. What's the health benefits of walking, biking, and things like that. So working with public health to promote some of their resources as well. Engineering. Looking upon this plan as the CIP is updated annually, considering these projects as part of those annual updates. Adopting a complete streets policy, which is kind of a newer initiative through the state where as roadways are developed and plans are being prepared to not just think about the vehicle, but to think about the pedestrians and bicyclists that may be using that road as well. It's a framework that's, I believe the city is doing this already. It's just kind of establishing a procedure to go through that process. And again, that's something that has been gaining attention across the state. So encouragement, again, utilizing the Lake Wobegon Regional Trail as a major asset for the city, building upon that system so when there's opportunities to connect, provide wayfinding signage to direct people to that, and looking for opportunities for additional events that may build upon that or utilize that for 5K, things like that. You know, just ways to help build that utilization of the existing infrastructure and promoting active living, sort of healthy lifestyles, that kind of stuff. And finally, enforcement, building upon the comments where there are concerns, perceptions about safety issues with the traffic and pedestrian conflicts with vehicles. Looking with the police department, sheriff's department to consider those opportunities if there are any issues that are out there that may be more problematic at key spots. Looking at opportunities to educate as other resources are out there to help remind people that this is a shared street and there's opportunities for both to fit within this space. Evaluation, long term it was discussed that maintenance is an issue in terms of plowing and for the sidewalks, and long term maybe that's something that the city can revisit in terms of how the policy is applied, what the currency policy is, does it meet the needs, and how does funding align with that. And equity, just again ensuring that the resources that are available for all, ages and abilities, to really build upon that legacy as well. So that is a very quick run through of the plan itself. I did provide a copy of the plan, and I believe you have been sent a copy of that as well. I'm here to answer any questions if you have any, but thank you for your time.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor and Council, just so you know, earlier this evening, we submitted a grant request for $50,000 to help with the sidewalk project as identified. And the reason we believe that we have a better chance now to receive that grant due to this master plan being adopted. So that was part of the whole process of why we went through this exercise to adopt this and do that public stakeholders. So we got a pretty good chance, but we'll see what happens here.
Okay. All right. Action item is consideration to adopt and amend the plan. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved. I'll second.
Okay. First and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Ordinance number 1115-2018-2, an ordinance amending zoning ordinance number 1989-1-A as amended, adopted by reference as Chapter 153 of the Melrose City Code, amending Section 700 sign regulations, official title, and summary ordinance. Lisa.
The sign ordinance we've kind of talked about in previous months, so I don't think I need to go through in too much detail. Some of the changes are we've added provision to allow recognition to be on items that are provided as a donation for up to 15% of the item. We've changed the commercial signage from a 250 square foot maximum per frontage to 500 square feet maximum per frontage. We've added provision of a conditional use permit to allow signage to exceed the size when it meets specific criteria. And we also now require landscaping at the base of freestanding signs. Questions?
No.
There's both a ordinance and a summary ordinance.
So the first one is a consideration of adopting ordinance number 1115-2018-2. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Second part, council to give consideration approving the official title and summary of the ordinance number 1115-2018-2. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. 7C, LELS agreement, ASHME agreement.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Council, with the change in health insurance, the terms of our agreements required a modification to the agreement. After negotiations with the AFSCME as well as LELS, we've come to terms, which is actually a reduction in overall cost for health insurance, which is a change in health insurance plans. So having said that, we're estimating a reduction in costs of over $37,000. About $37,000 total in benefits for the city's general and utilities. And it's our recommendation to concur with the Melrose Public Utilities Commission approving the negotiated health insurance with LELS as well as with AFSCME.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve all that?
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
So-
And then,
Yep. And so, Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, what I asked for is the, which was action item number 1, is for the, yeah, it looks like I worded this a little weird, is that that we agreed to consent with the AFSCME agreement with the Public Utilities Commission, and the next one is to concur and match that for the LELS and the general fund employees.
okay. Can I get a motion to approve as he said?
So move.
Okay, there was a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
D, Fish Passage Rock Arch Rapids update.
Mr. Mayor, we have some staff here to talk through this evening, but I just wanted to give a real short summary on where we're at and what we're asking for of the council this evening. So about a week and a half ago, we had a stakeholders meeting with all the local agencies affecting our Rock Arch Rapids. The concept as currently on the table is to replace our existing dam with a Rock Arch Rapids fish passage with no impact on the pool reservoir. Now, the design currently reflects about a 13-foot drop, and it also reflects about a 21-step associated steps to make that work at roughly 6 inches a drop per step. There's also stream realignment with that current plan. Now, as the project was originally discussed a little over a year ago, that this project would make sense from the DNR's perspective. However, after the DNR and some history that's occurred between now and then, the DNR, as well as some other funding sources, believe that a project like this is more of a dam replacement project versus a stream restoration project. Therefore, the funding sources, as well as the DNR, believe that this is more of a, if we were to move forward, that we would want to see more of a restoration and mitigate the concerns that way. So we come up with a couple of concept sketches. So in short, is that our current design that we have proposed will not be permitted from the regulatory agencies. However, the DNR has given us some alternatives to talk about, and which would potentially mitigate the funding concerns as well as mitigate some of our problems that we have on the lake. So what we're asking for this evening is for two options for you. One is that the city has either to stop all planning and efforts for the Rock Arch Dam altogether, just stop, and then we just move forward with the bridge design with a modest channel realignment associated to that. Or two, ask for a stakeholders meeting to educate people on what this could potentially look like. The constraint that we have to operate within now is the timetable. Because as of today, we have potentially some funding to help cover this project. And according to our conversation with the Sauk River Watershed, as well as the DNR, we believe that our funding that we currently have in place from Lessard, tentative funding that we have from Lessard Sams and LCCMR could potentially stay, and we could move forward. Plus, they feel that based upon the initial assessments and comparable projects, that the project could come in under budget from what we currently have. So we did ask Nikki to be here this evening from the DNR. Mike Nielsen's here. I believe we have representatives from Sauk River Watershed as well as the Stearns County. So Nikki's here to outline the concerns from the dam safety organizations out there. Excuse the pun, but that's what it's called. And so she's going to walk through that, and then we'll ask Mike Nielsen to maybe make some comments, and if there's anybody else from the organizations that were here, feel free to speak. So.
Good evening, Mayor Finken and City Council members. Thank you for having me here this evening. What I would like to do is to read a letter that was written by our River Ecology Unit staff, which are the engineers and river restoration staff that would be working on the plan alongside WSB and Associates. So this was written by Amanda Hillman and Neil Hagerud with the DNR. Greetings, Michael. We would like to thank you for organizing the meeting on November 6th to discuss fish passage at the Melrose Dam. We appreciated the willingness to talk about the partial rapids and river restoration option that we provided. There was a lot of discussion and good questions asked by the group. It is our
Complete those gaps and help kind of build that implementation plan for when funds are available. These are the first projects that should be pursued. As well as just general recommendations and outlines for improving safety and walking and putting together that implementation plan. So this is what the resulting map looks like. Again, it's building upon the comprehensive plan's proposed sidewalk trail map, which is really the base here. And then the change or additional piece are these kind of greener, light blue highlighted areas that show where kind of more the framework, the backbone is of this system to help really identify if this is in place. These are the opportunities that will help connect all the neighborhoods of the community, provide access to those major destinations, and build upon those routes and loops that have been identified in the past. And then the letters that are in place that go along with the projects that were identified with a time frame to help the city consider these as they pursue forward opportunities for grants, for the CIP projects, any other capital investment opportunities. So again, we're trying to build upon what has been put in place, but really identify where those key gaps and opportunities could be. And then finally, we developed a series of recommendations based upon that 6E framework. So they're all listed here, but I'll just pick a couple to kind of highlight. But for education, really regularly promoting this system, utilizing the community's existing communication resources that they have. Every once in a while, that city newsletter, maybe there's an opportunity to remind people that we have these loop cards that are available that can be picked up at City Hall. And, health benefits. What's the health benefits of walking and biking and things like that. So working with public health to promote some of their resources as well. Engineering. Looking upon this plan as the CIP is updated annually, considering these projects as part of those annual updates. Adopting a complete streets policy, which is kind of a newer initiative through the state where as roadways are developed and plans are being prepared to not just think about the vehicle, but to think about the pedestrians and bicyclists that may be using the road as well. It's a framework that's, I believe the city is doing this already. It's just kind of establishing a procedure to go through that process. And again, that's something that has been gaining attention across the state. So encouragement, again, utilizing the Lake Wobegon Regional Trail as a major asset for the city, building upon that system. So when there's opportunities to connect, provide wayfinding signage to direct people to that, and maybe looking for opportunities for additional events that may build upon that or utilize that for 5K, things like that. Just ways to help build that utilization of the existing infrastructure and promoting active living, healthy lifestyles, that kind of stuff. And finally, enforcement, building upon the comments where there are concerns, perceptions about safety issues with the traffic and pedestrian conflicts with vehicles. Looking with the police department, sheriff's department to consider those opportunities if there are any issues that are out there that may be more problematic at key spots. Looking at opportunities to educate as other resources are out there to help remind people that this is a shared street and there's opportunities for both to fit within this space. Evaluation. Long term, it was discussed that maintenance is an issue in terms of plowing inside the sidewalks, and long term, maybe that's something that the city can revisit in terms of how the policy is applied, what the currency policy is, does it meet the needs, and how does funding align with that. And equity, just again, ensuring that the resources that are available for all, ages and abilities, to really build upon that legacy as well. So That is a very quick run-through of the plan itself. I did provide a copy of the plan, and I believe you have been sent a copy of that as well. I'm here to answer any questions if you have any, but thank you for your time.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor and Council, just so you know, earlier this evening, we submitted a grant request for $50,000 to help with the sidewalk project as identified. And the reason we believe that we have a better chance now to receive that grant due to this master plan being adopted. So that was part of the whole process of why we went through this exercise to adopt this and do that public stakeholders. So we got a pretty good chance, but we'll see what happens here.
Okay. All right. Action item is consideration to adopt and amend the plan. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved. I'll second.
First and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Ordinance number 1115-2018-2, an ordinance amending zoning ordinance number 1989-1-A as amended, adopted by reference as Chapter 153 of the Melrose City Code, amending Section 700 sign regulations, official title, and summary ordinance. Lisa.
The sign ordinance we've kind of talked about in previous months, so I don't think I need to go through in too much detail. Some of the changes are we've added provision to allow recognition to be on items that are provided as a donation for up to 15% of the item. We've changed the commercial signage from a 250 square foot maximum per frontage to 500 square feet maximum per frontage. We've added provision of a conditional use permit to allow signage to exceed the size when it meets specific criteria. And we also now require landscaping at the base of freestanding signs. Questions?
No.
There's both a ordinance and a summary ordinance.
So the first one is a consideration of adopting ordinance number 1115-2018-2. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Second part, council to give consideration approving the official title and summary of the ordinance number 1115-2018-2. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. 7C, LELS agreement, ASHME agreement.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Council, with the change in health insurance, the terms of our agreements required a modification to the agreement. After negotiations with the AFSCME as well as LELS, we've come to terms, which is actually a reduction in overall cost for health insurance, which is a change in health insurance plans. So having said that, we're estimating a reduction in costs of over $37,000. No, excuse me, about $37,000 total in benefits for the city's general and utilities. And it's our recommendation to concur with the Melrose Public Utilities Commission approving the negotiated health insurance with LELS as well as with AFSCME.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve all that?
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
So-
And then,
Yep. And so, Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, what I asked for is which was action item number 1, is for the, it looks like I worded this a little weird, is that that we agreed to consent with the AFSCME agreement with the Public Utilities Commission, and the next one is to concur and match that for the LELS and the general fund employees.
okay. Can I get a motion to approve as he said?
So moved.
Okay, there was a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
All right, thank you.
D, Fish Passage Rock Arch Rapids update.
Mr. Mayor, we have some staff here to talk through this evening, but I just wanted to give a real short summary on where we're at and what we're asking for of the council this evening. So about a week and a half ago, we had a stakeholders meeting with all the local agencies affecting our Rock Arch Rapids. The concept as currently on the table is to replace our existing dam with a Rock Arch Rapid fish passage with no impact on the pool reservoir. Now, the design currently reflects about a 13-foot drop, and it also reflects about a 21-step associated steps to make that work at roughly 6 inches a drop per step. There's also stream realignment with that current plan. Now, as the project was originally discussed a little over a year ago, that this project would make sense from the DNR's perspective. However, after the DNR and some history that's occurred between now and then, the DNR, as well as some other funding sources, believe that a project like this is more of a dam replacement project versus a stream restoration project. Therefore, the funding sources, as well as the DNR, believe that this is more of a, if we were to move forward, that we would want to see more of a restoration and mitigate the concerns that way. So we come up with a couple of concept sketches. So in short, is that our current design that we have proposed will not be permitted from the regulatory agencies. However, the DNR has given us some alternatives to talk about, and which would potentially mitigate the funding concerns, as well as mitigate some of our problems that we have on the lake. So what we're asking for this evening is for two options for you. One is that the city has either to stop all planning and efforts for the Rock Arch Dam altogether, just stop, and then we just move forward with the bridge design with a modest channel realignment associated to that. Or two, ask for a stakeholders meeting to educate people on what this could potentially look like. The constraint that we have to operate within now is the timetable, because as of today, we have potentially some funding to help cover this project. And according to our conversation with the Sauk River Watershed, as well as the DNR, we believe that our funding that we currently have in place from Lessard's tentative funding that we have from Lessard SAMS and LCCMR could potentially stay, and we could move forward. Plus, they feel that based upon the initial assessments and comparable projects, that the project could come in under budget from what we currently have. So we did ask Nikki to be here this evening from the DNR. Mike Nielsen's here. I believe we have representatives from Sauk River Watershed, as well as the Stearns County. So Nikki's here to outline the concerns from the dam safety organizations out there. Excuse the pun, but that's what it's called. And so she's going to walk through that, and then we'll ask Mike Nielsen to maybe make some comments, and if there's anybody else from the organizations that were here, feel free to speak. So.
Good evening, Mayor Finken and City Council members. Thank you for having me here this evening. What I would like to do is to read a letter that was written by our River Ecology Unit staff, which are the engineers and river restoration staff that would be working on the plan alongside WSB and Associates. So this was written by Amanda Hillman and Neil Hagerud with the DNR. Greetings, Michael. We would like to thank you for organizing the meeting on November 6th to discuss fish passage at the Melrose Dam. We appreciated the willingness to talk about the partial rapids and river restoration option that we provided. There was a lot of discussion and good questions asked by the group. It is our understanding that the city wants to design the Rock Arch Rapids that maintains the existing full pool to preserve property values along the reservoir. Though we, also part of the River Ecology Unit, also known as REU, are relatively new to this project, Luther Odland has been actively involved since May 2018. More recently, he provided specific design recommendations and requested hydraulic modeling and other technical information to ensure design integrity and address potential risks and impacts. This request for information is fundamental to reliable design of the Rock Arch Rapids and has not been responded to as of this writing. We have reviewed this proposal from the standpoint of ensuring that the technical design option is beneficial to river structure and function, for example, habitat, water quality, and connectivity, and minimizes risk to downstream infrastructure. As stated at the meeting, there are a number of significant issues posed by constructing a rock arch rapids at the full pool elevation. Based on previous projects, a full pool rapids may be past the technical limits of the rock arch rapids method, as this project would likely not flood out. This design height results in extreme velocities and stream power during flood flows and presents high risk to the structure and downstream infrastructure, and does not even account for ice damming and debris flows that would further add to the risk. Cost. The rock size and amounts required for this option expands the cost considerably. Maintaining the full pool elevation continues the habitat degradation that has occurred, with sediment and nutrient accumulation and a highly likely increase in water temperatures. The current sediment-laden reservoir is not the quality of habitat we are looking to reconnect. Drawing the dam down would increase sediment transport capacity, increase quality habitat and connectivity between downstream and upstream. Actually, it was upstream and downstream. A rapids constructed at an elevation well below full pool would be less expensive, enable significant habitat gains in habitat diversity and extent, and re-establish habitat connectivity. Extending the rock arch rapids up to full pool height to preserve property values seems counter to the intended use of Lessard-Sams funds, which in our understanding, quote, must be expended to restore, protect, and enhance wetlands, prairies, forests, and habitat for fish, game, and wildlife, unquote. Fish passage can be accomplished with a much lower rapids and channel restoration. As you know, the LSOHC, that's Lessard-Sams Outdoor Heritage Council, has specifically questioned the application of this type of structure during the 2018 project proposal hearings in August. The REU has an interest in ensuring that the application of a rock arch rapids is associated with quality habitat gains and benefits to river ecology and does not result in a high-risk structure. Judging from the previous involvement of Luther Odland, our input on the design for this project to restore river structure and function and reduce risk to downstream infrastructure has largely been overlooked. Based on the impacts outlined above, the River Ecology Unit will not be involved in project design any further unless the height and configuration is changed to reflect and address these issues and risks. There are recent examples of successful projects that reduced the height of the dam, restored river ecology, and minimized risk with rock arch rapids. Lake Shady on the Zumbro River is one and was presented as an example at the meeting. We remain hopeful that the community will seriously consider the partial rapids stream restoration option. We would emphasize that there is an incredible opportunity here to eliminate long-term maintenance of the dam, eliminate current and future sedimentation issues, and improve the river system. Sincerely, Amanda Hillman, Restoration Coordinator, and Neil Hagerud, River Ecologist.
So, Mr. Mayor and council members, we also received a couple of correspondence, which were put in front of you earlier this evening, which was a letter from the Melrose Lake Association and another one from Mark Mayers. Staff was able to secure some information from Jeff Johnson, the county assessor. My specific question was, Jeff, how could this potentially impact the property owners? Based on two similar other projects that he was able to identify outside of Stearns County, that it was a net neutral impact on the property owners. They didn't see change in their property valuations. But he said it's always depends on the arm length transactions and how that all works. There's a number of questions that we have yet in regards to ownership rights and what the condition of the soils would look like and how long it would take to do this. One of the other things that staff was able to do today, actually Lisa was able to do this, and it's a nice summary of the various options that have been floated and discussed. And so it's just a short memo that we presented to you in regards to the potential cost impacts. What else was there that we had for this? I mean, we do have a couple of concept sketches that we did put together and we did put in the agenda, and I could be happy to put it up on the screen there. And as well as Dennis Fuchs from Stearns County has asked us to play a video, which is about a minute long, which just shows how sediment flows, and I could play that if you want. And then after that, I'll turn it over to Mike if he has any other additional comments. Maybe to talk about the impact on doing this now versus doing it with the bridge, or how that would work. I think there's some value there too, so. So would you like to see the video? It's about a minute long.
Yeah.
Yes, no?
Yep.
Okay, all right. So, I got it up on YouTube here, so. So what this is, this video, again, it's recommended by Dennis for us to just watch. The DNR has seen this before, but it just shows you what a low head dam insulation affects over the course of sediment, and how that actually impacts it. So over a long term, and this is super fast, but it's a really good example of what's going on for Melrose here. So our dam was built in 1975, which is a low-head dam. And it's just showing you the sediment as it accumulates. And maybe you could comment on, as it moves through the downstream, what will happen during high water events as well. I think that's what it demonstrates here.
Well, a dam basically restricts the flow of the water, as you would guess. And the main function of a river is to move sediment. So you're going to have continuing sediment build up at the dam until a point where we get such an event that it blasts through. So what happened there was that the sediment built up above the level of the dam, and then the water was able to force and push it down. And as you can see, the wave that came down over the top, it's almost like a tidal wave or a flash flood. That water has so much hydraulic force when it goes over the dam, and it scours a huge hole, and it will take sediment downstream. And as that water is moving faster downstream, it's going to tear out the banks. It's going to move with pretty amazing erosive force. And ultimately, it will get to a point where it settles, it loses some of its energy, and it starts to settle out. That material will settle out and form point bars, side bars, that sort of thing along the river. But it can cause a whole lot of problems in the process of moving. When Amanda talks about flooding out on a rock art rapids, what they mean is that if the slope of the river is, the top of the rock art rapids is here and the bottom of the rock art rapids is here, that when it floods out, which is what we want to happen in a rock art rapid situation, that the water level would be the same on the tail end as it is on the front end, so that it would be a smooth surface running across the top of the rock arch rapids. That's not going to happen if we have 13 feet of rise from the top to the bottom. There's really no way that that would flood out, and it will cause the kind of erosive force that you could see in that video where it built up and then suddenly it all let loose and went downstream.
Thank you. The other thing that we asked, once we heard about this scenario, is we asked WSB to put together a concept sketch on what it theoretically could look like. So it's kind of a cartoon sketch, but it's not at the same time. And the flow and the meanders of the river need to be adjusted adjusted yet based upon DNR input and city engineering input. But really, the impact of the location of the river, you'd go from, I think you're recommending roughly 7 foot from the 13 feet elevation. And what they did is WSB, they had a bathymetric survey, which is basically the depths of the river. And then they place the stream channel based on the deepest part of that of the survey. So I have 2 maps here that they produced for us. So conceptually, as you can see, the screen is the location where the deepest holes are in there. We also took a small adjustment here to one section to make sure that each property has about the same amount of land on each side, and then same thing on the west basin as well. So again, these are just concept sketches on what it could look like, but what staff has instructed WSB to do is to stop all work on everything until we decide what to do from here. So these are just concept sketches. We have a lot of questions that we need to get answered before we can make a recommendation one way or the other. Any of your questions, I'll turn it over to Mike to make any last comments.
No questions?
Oh, we'll ask them later.
All right, well, I just wanted to make sure you didn't have any questions for Mike before I started. So, yeah, I guess, we were a little bit surprised. The drop in the dam has been a little bit problematic for design. Velocities have been creeping up there to where it could potentially be a problem. Some time ago, I guess we flattened out the slope. Initially, we had designed the project with 0.8 of a foot between the Rock Arch Rapids drop, which turned out to be too steep. We had to lower that to 0.6 of a foot, which substantially increased the number of rapids that go up into the lake, which consequently significantly increased the overall cost of the project. Unfortunately, we had not done a lot of preliminary design before we made the cost estimates that went into the grant applications. As we moved along through the design, finding out the costs were higher than what were initially anticipated, we kind of highlighted that we're probably short of money. So we started tweaking the design a little bit and working with the DNR on boulder size, and that's when some of these concerns came up. I guess at this point for tonight, we're probably not looking for any decision from the City Council other than to continue discussions with the DNR, the Lakes Associations, and the abutting property owners to essentially gather more information so we can all make a better informed decision on whether to move forward or not. So with that, I guess the grant funding opportunity is here today. If we turn it down, I don't know, what the opportunity in the future would be to ever get any additional funding to complete the project in the future. So the big advantage, we did think that we could go back to our original plan of just realigning the channel downstream, leaving the dam in place, which would be entirely funded by the city with no grant money. That's still an option. We can always, I believe, fall back on that, assuming that we can get permitting for that. But I think it certainly warrants investigating some of these alternatives a little bit further. I know I've had several questions from property owners this week, what that would look like. Again, the sketches that we provided were really not an engineering sketch, more than a concept plan, I guess, put together. So with that, I would certainly take any questions.
I have a question. So if the city decides to leave the dam in place, it's going to be a matter of time for that dam to
Well, yeah, I mean, every piece of infrastructure has a life cycle. The dam is getting older. If the dam were to fail, it's our understanding the DNR would not permit rebuilding a dam in that location. Is that correct, Nick?
It's likely, yes.
Yeah, I mean, she can't necessarily say definitively yes or no, but we've been informed that most likely we would not get a permit to rebuild the dam as it currently exists today. The other issue that, the proposed Rock Arch Rapids maintaining the full pool did not address, I think, is the sediment. Our bathymetric study and lake study did identify that if we were to dredge the lake, just the east basin between the bridges would cost about $9 million. And if we're going to dredge on the other side, the westmost basin, I think it was roughly about $3 million more. And then given a couple of different methods for calculating the sedimentation rates, it could fill back in anywhere between 24 years and I think 135. We came up with an average of about 70 years, and that may be much longer than it actually would take. I mean, it's a very hard thing to judge. So I think Nikki has some examples where people that have dredged expecting a 50-year life cycle, and the lake had resedimented in substantially within 10 to 15 years. Less than 10. So that's always a concern that I think we need to look at more as we move forward. And again, I'm not recommending one way or the other. We went into this with the full expectation that we were going to maintain the pool elevation as requested by pretty much the City Council, the Lakes Association, and everybody else. But as we go through the design, there are a few benefits that are popping up to potentially lowering the lake. But obviously, there's a whole nother can of worms that needs to be evaluated before we can say one way or the other. So.
I guess I have some questions for you. Yeah. So a lot of this we're doing is, to clean up the river, right? A little bit, it's, when we look at, and I'll use my water treatment background for, water, and with the runoff from all the tiling, we get a lot of phosphates in the water. I would think that would be more of a concern than this. My worry is, we spent $50,000 on this, and this is the way that the DNR wanted us to go. So this leaves me the question, so if we're taking out the dams, how soon is Sauk Lake going to be gone, and how soon is the chain of lakes going to be gone when those dams are removed by Sauk Center and Cold Spring?
I don't actually have an answer for you, sir.
But that's what you're saying is going to happen then, huh?
What I can tell you is that it is the goal of the River Ecology Unit to restore rivers to their natural conditions, which is to have a natural system in place that will move sediment and provide habitat. What you have now with the reservoir, if you dredged and spent that $12 million, is a temporary fix. And with the full pool elevation, the reason that they said that it may not work here is that they had another high head dam replaced with Rock Arch Rapids at, I don't know if it was 13 feet, but something similar. And during high water events, not necessarily a 1% or 100-year flood event, the top tiers of that Rock Arch Rapids, which have boulders that are probably as tall as Mike, slamming up against each other, like literally being pushed by the water into each other and compacting and basically not functioning the way that rapids is supposed to function. So what our River Ecology Unit was proposing here is a partial pool elevation. So not going back to just having a flat river. There would still be a slope, there would still be a Rock Arch Rapids, there would still be height, but the height of the Rock Arch Rapids would come in level of the sediment, which is about 7.5 feet or so. So that's really the same elevation change that there was in Hutchinson, which was something that I didn't know at the time that I did the presentation to the city council about Rock Arch Rapids, making that comparison there. As far as phosphates goes, they're still going to be in the water. That gets taken up by vegetation. There can be filtration that's done through vegetation, especially during flooding events. You would be recreating a floodplain area, which is something that is good for rivers to have. Access to their floodplains is very important. When you channelize rivers and you take that floodplain away, that's not a good, healthy situation for a river system to have that happen. There are a lot of benefits to putting back the natural system that was originally here long ago. Now, obviously, none of us ever have lived during that time when it was all river, but in the situations where dams have failed and the request has come from the cities to restore and put a dam back, that has not been allowed. They have done Rock Arch Rapids in those situations, they have done river restorations, and in those situations, the fear for the landowners was we're not going to have our land values anymore. They increased the amount of land that they owned, and their values did not go down. So it's a difference of having a water body that you can look at, but not really use in most of the other senses, and having a river system back that you can recreate on, you can have habitat, that sort of thing. I know it's a huge mental shift to think there isn't going to be a lake there, but there would still be water, and there would probably be more habitat, more wildlife if that's what you're interested in. Certainly more opportunity for fishing and having the sediment movement, because that is just a temporary fix. If you dredge, how long is it going to be before you're faced with another $12 million project? In the case of the city of Elk River, it was less than 10 years. And it was a significant expense for the people that live in that community as well. But as far as like Sauk Lake goes and the chain of lakes, the horseshoe chain of lakes, unless those dams fail or they come forward with a request for a project, I don't really know what the answer would be. It's probably an answer above my pay grade. Although I will process permits.
Okay.
I live on Riverside there along the chain, so if it gets dropped for the needed feet, what's going to happen between the current shoreline and the water drawdown? Are they going to have native plantings? Is that a part of what they're looking at? What happens to all those properties that all of a sudden now have all this sediment and muck in front of their place versus water down?
When the water goes down, the sediment will compact. So we've got the atmospheric pressure pushing down on the sediment. We also have the loss of water in that material. So it's going to be moving into the river. So that sediment will consolidate and harden. And it certainly can take some time, but when the river restoration staff has done their restoration projects, like down in Rochester where Lake Shady failed, the dam failed, and they had to do a river restoration project there, they did do plantings as well through the restoration. But the landowners that were on either side of that increased their land because the land was essentially split up then. And that's something that Michael is exploring with the assessor for Stearns County as to how that would be broken up, whether or not the property lines would go all the way to the water, straight line to the water. That's likely what would happen. I can't guarantee that either because I'm not with the assessors, but we do know that people have gained land and their property values have not dropped.
There maintains a buffer that cannot be built upon
floodway, that's still floodway. There does need to be a study done for FEMA regardless of how anything is done with regard to the rock art rapids, the river realignment, all of that. So, and that's something that Mike and his crews are working on. So we would know more about what the regulations would be following getting a new floodplain map. Because you can make changes in a flood fringe area, but you cannot make changes in a floodway. And a floodway is where when the water comes out of the channel, there's going to be a current there. And that current can carry things in and it can carry things away. So we don't want you to endanger your infrastructure. We don't want you to put a building in there that's going to be able to be washed away during a floodway, flood event. But if it's flood fringe, where the water level just comes up and kind of sits there and is held in place until the water level drops, those areas you could do some work. You could have some buildings you would want to floodproof them, of course. But there could be changes made in those areas based on floodplain ordinances, local land use control, that sort of thing.
Well, thank you, Nikki. So, Mr. Mayor and council members, you have two options in front of you this evening. So, having said that, there's a lot of questions that we don't know yet. And we would need to start building a frequently asked questions, FAQ, and just start trying to get answers. And then potentially, if you feel it's appropriate, we could have a stakeholders meeting to maybe address some of those questions, and then you could take action after that, or you could just take action this evening. So.
Okay, council, questions?
Well, being that this was not a project that we actually pursued, it was sort of presented to us, and with the understanding that the water level would remain, I don't think that, we haven't actually applied for the grant money, correct?
We did.
We applied for it, but we haven't been awarded.
Right, so where we're at in that process is Lessard Sams. It's actually a bill that goes before the House and the Senate, and the governor signs it. Same thing for LCCMR. So they'll take action at that starting in January when the session begins.
Right.
But as of today, we've been preliminarily approved up to 3.1 million.
And it,
3.4 million in grant monies.
yeah.
But
Not
that's
to,
still
not to
subject.
exceed project expense, I'm
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
But in my mind, this is such a huge decision. It's not something that we can decide in the next 2 months. This is like a 10-year visionary thing. I mean, this is another, how long have we had the lake in town? 100 years?
150.
150
Over
years?
150.
So I don't think this is something we can even discuss in depth enough for the foreseeable future, much less in the time needed to apply for the grant money and tell them, yes, we're going to go for it. I think we'd be better off withdrawing from the grant process, allowing somebody else to use it that has a project that they can definitely use it on, and then we can reapply when the time comes. Maybe this is a discussion we start now, but I don't think this is something that we pursue at this time.
I agree.
I agree with that.
It isn't gonna affect our bridge project anyway, so.
Right.
Yep.
Are we far along, excuse me, can I speak? Are we far enough along in the process that we damage our chances of getting funding in the future if we pull out at this stage?
I would argue, we had conversations with I had conversations with Greg Berg as well as with Dennis at the county, and if we were to take action now, I mean, we're not gonna look good any way we do this, but it's better to pull out sooner than it is later, for sure, because you don't wanna go through March, April, and then pull out when the funding could be lobbied and legislated for other people, so.
But this has changed.
Oh, yeah, yeah, but I'm just saying
It
that's.
is, the whole project and the whole premise of what we applied for the grants under has completely changed.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I would assume that they would maybe want a new application possibly.
That's a really good question. We had conversations with the DNR staff as well as with Stearns County, and they both feel that our applications would still be valid because it's just more of a design modification, because we're still asking for stream bank restoration, rock arch rapids, fish passage. It just makes it longer versus shorter, so.
If we didn't get funding for it in the future, the cost would be about $3,200 per household for what we've been, for the Lessard Sims and LCC line.
So,
And the dredging would be about $7,500 per household. It's citywide, more realistic, but,
There is a ton of grant money available for this stuff yearly, correct?
well, it all depends on funding. There is money through Lessard LCCMR, which is through gambling money. You know, your pull tabs, not pull tabs, but your
state.
Yep. So there is money there to apply. So, but it's competitive.
All right.
I just want to point out that, you know, the downstream improvements from the bridge, for the bridge, if we turn this money down at this point, that would be 100% city cost. We had figured that, I guess, before we started this project, but I just wanted to point out that there would be some additional cost, I think, to the city to complete that improvement on our own. Something to think about.
Well, I guess we can probably table this till next meeting, the decision. And in the meantime, if people feel strongly one way or another, now that it's out, they can make phone calls to one way or the other. I don't know if that's...
You tell us.
Or...
Within the decision that needs to be made, does the dredging need to be done, or is that just a comparison?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, dredging is an option, but the concern with dredging is where do you get the money? That's the problem with that particular scenario. That is a solution, but it's like Mr. Nielsen was saying. It's just in this. I think the estimated cost, we pulled the report, which is about 3 years old now, which is a little over, just under $10 million then. Now it's, you know, probably 12 million after, but.
But does it need to be dredged, or can it stay the way?
Oh, it can stay the way it is. I mean, that's just it. The dam, it's, as per the engineering report that we get from the state, it's in a fair condition, but it's a significant hazard because of the design. We do have some separation in the, and I talked to Steve Worms, and I think we all know who Steve is, and he said there's 2 feet of cement on that thing. So I don't think we've got to be too worried about the dam having issues. But the biggest concern that you have is that the sediment keeps filling in, and that's what Nikki was referring to, is that eventually you're going to start seeing cattails and grow, most likely first along the west side of the footbridge, because that's like 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches now. I had somebody mention to me yesterday that there's they can't get their paddle boat in there anymore. So, but again, but there's time. There's absolutely time. So, but it's just going to keep getting bigger a challenge. So, and what Lisa was referring to, she actually put together a memo. Actually, I want to commend her on this memo. It just kind of talks about the funding scenarios, how this was laid out, and the cost gaps that we have, and what the potential impacts could be on individual parcel owners against the, you know, just some scenarios that were floated that we just documented, so it's easier to understand. So,
Yeah.
so really, it really boils down to what you want to do. It's either stakeholders meeting, wait a month, or just wait a month, yet for public comment, or we're done and we're just going to move forward with our current bridge design with our.
I think every piece of information should be laid out, costs both ways. Trying to get on the website, get people to call and let us know how they feel about it. I do not live on the lake, but some of you people do. You guys live on the lake, so.
Well, my primary concern is that we go down this path again. We get $50,000 into it, and we just go, you know what, we just don't want to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Or all of a sudden it changes again. That's my concern, is everything keeps changing so often.
I mean, you can pull the dam out and just let the river go. Correct? What does it cost to remove the dam? 150,000?
We had some estimates, I don't know.
Okay.
Then it would be natural. Right, but then you don't, right.
You have no control. You know, where potentially in the future, who knows if adding hydro on the dam. You know, there's just so many things that are coming out in the future that once you lose it too, it's gone.
Right.
You know, retrofit a dam for hydro, I don't know. I think,
Maybe that's what we gotta do.
yeah, I just think that, I just feel like this is thrown at us after all these years of this bridge and this dam. It's just, everything's coming up at the end of the game and let's change it. So I don't like it at all. So I hope that they can get their stuff together down there and come up with a solid plan, and I think the people should be.
When you say that, are you referring to the DNR getting their stuff together?
I do feel that.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that the requested information regarding hydraulics was critical to being able to determine whether or not a full pool elevation around Arch Rapids would work here.
Yeah.
And we still do not have the hydraulics information. So that information that was requested from May 2018 till now, not being available to the DNR staff, led them to the letter that we received last week.
Okay.
They are very skilled at doing river restorations. They feel that your grant will not be, your application will not be harmed by making a change to a partial pool rock arch rapids design.
Okay.
That's really where Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Council was going with their questions about, is this just a dam replacement that will look more natural, or is this really going to improve habitat? And in some of the members of the Outdoor Heritage Council's opinions, it's just another dam. So they're less likely to want to fund full pool rock arch rapids going forward.
Okay. All right. What would you all like to do?
I think that was probably, some of this was initiated by the Lake Association as far as trying to keep the water levels there, but, you know, I think maybe a stakeholder meeting would be something to consider anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Get some more input from those people, and
I strongly agree.
So, Mr. Mayor and council members, again, what the stakeholders meeting is, it's more about just education on what this thing would look like. And so I just want to be absolutely clear with the council and the commission and the residents here that, you know, it's either we do the project the DNR way, or it's not going to be able to happen. And so this is really about educating people what these, you know, I think I have an example of, today I just got it this afternoon, of like 16 or 17 examples of what it would look like, and, you know, and how it can be modified. So that's what the stakeholders meeting is. It's just to educate people what this is, and then giving you enough time to figure out, you know, is this acceptable? And then you have to make a decision.
You do have the option of building a full pool rock arch rapids on your own. You do have that option. That is an option. Whether it's feasible and practical is another question, and whether it's going to survive any large rainfall events is another question. So the costs are pretty high for...
Just to be clear on that, Nikki, based upon the letter that we have, is that the DNR is not going to support a permit, so...
The River Ecology Unit would recommend denial of a permit.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily always mean that a permit isn't issued.
But I don't want to go $50,000 and, you know, in a hole, and all of a sudden they say no again, you know. So.
What is the likeliness of the basin now? Because what I envision is a huge swamp type deal with lots of rushes, and because it is fairly flat.
What Amanda was noticing in looking at recent Google Earth photos and reviewing aerial photography of the basin, she noted that within the last few years there
That, well, what I'm wondering is if we return it to a river, take the dam out and create some small pools, now we're exposing all that sediment to
Air.
to the air, so you're gonna get, you know,
Consolidation.
and it's
And
probably,
dewatering.
and it's still gonna be fairly wet because it's fairly flat. And I could see that just becoming just a giant swamp.
I honestly haven't experienced a restoration, so I can't tell you for certain.
Right.
But I can tell you that when you have a slope on the system, there'll be a high point, which is where the water's coming into the area, and the low point is where it's running out. And the water that's underground tends to mirror what's happening on top of the ground. So there may be some wetland areas, perhaps in the upper reaches, but I would expect that as you move through the system, that you'd be seeing a drying factor. And really, the people to talk with this about are the river ecology restoration staff that have physically done this work, because the same concerns were happening in Lake Shady, they were happening in other areas where they've done this work, and they could speak into that for certain.
I can tell you by living out where I live on the upper end, that in the last 30 years, the river has narrowed down behind my place by about, I would say, 50 feet from where it was a pond. Now it is a group of cattails, and trees are starting to grow out in the middle of the river where the river was at one time. So that's in the last 20, 30 years. So for me, using that as a basis, I'd see that's what happens up here. That eventually you would fill in with cattails, and then pretty soon the trees would start growing, and you'd have, you know, kind of like the drainage ditches that they're cleaning out around the counties right now, because the trees have grown up around the ditches and the water doesn't flow anymore. So now they're cleaning out the ditches and charging the landowners an outrageous amount of money to clean out the ditches for drainage because of the trees and the cattails that have filled in. So I can see that happening out here too in the next 40, 50 years.
Well, I think that would be a good thing. I think I would direct that we have stakeholders meetings, start educating them. If all of you agree.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there should be a vote of some sort so that we have some indication of, not just go by a few comments that are submitted. I mean, there should be, maybe even extended to the whole community. I mean, this isn't just residents along the river, the public access down there. Everybody gets to use it, so.
This is a
I don't
big
know.
deal, and all the pictures on here look like out of town.
Yeah.
You're not dealing with residents living along there, so I mean, anything that's been researched here, you don't see any buildings, no. I think we gotta talk to the people that live along it and
Okay.
before we go any further.
So, at your stakeholders meeting, when the council comes back in December, are you gonna be in a position to say, you know, go or don't go? I'm just thinking about Tony's comments,
You gotta pull it if you're gonna pull it.
you know, if we're gonna,
Yep.
we're
Right.
not gonna do it, and you wanna, you get that maybe over to somebody else and go back, so we got a different plan.
Yeah, I want to know for me, my question that I want to know is, what is the cost of realignment all on us? If we would say,
So, Mr. Mayor and Council, what I would recommend then, based upon that comment, is that we would have a stakeholders presentation from the DNR, Soil and Water, Sauk River, whoever else would be experts in this area, be able to come. I'd even reach out to Olmsted County, talk to them, and get some maybe some written statements, or we could interview them and ask them some good questions, ask them to speak on that. I'm waiting for my calendar to open up here, but I would either recommend, I think it was the week of, here we go. I would recommend a stakeholder meeting the week of December 9th or the week of December 16th, somewhere in there, to have that stakeholders meeting, and in regards to, to making that happen, and then you guys can make your decision.
Your December meeting is the 13th.
Oh, yeah,
It's
that's
early
right.
this year. Yeah, it's every year we
You
gotta
know,
have
if
to.
you schedule that meeting, I mean, I don't
I-
care,
I
I'm
would-
just saying that your regular meeting is the 13th.
Yeah. I would say that if the council would wait no later than our January council meeting to make a final
And our
decision.
January council meeting is that first Thursday of the month, because we always have 2 in January.
Yeah. I mean, if you would do that, I think that's fair to the legislators.
Yeah.
If you want to poll or not. And plus, that gives you almost a month and a half to gather information, and staff would, between Lisa and I and Mike Nielsen, somewhat, we'd be able to gather this, and I'd be working with Greg Berg and Scott Henderson and all those guys from those agencies to help build a solid informational packet. We could also start putting stuff on our website as well, just so people know where to go get it. Yeah.
I'm sorry for the disrespect, just very frustrated.
Completely understand.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say that, between the engineering and regulatory, I mean, we've been spending the last 150 years figuring out how to make dams work. We've only been spending about the last 10 or 15 trying to figure out how to take them out. And every situation is very unique, so we almost need to start from square one. It's not a cookie cutter type thing, and these things do take some effort.
Okay.
But they are learning as they go on. That's how they know about that high head dam replacement and the damage that has occurred. They've fixed that system several times, and it's still not stable.
Yep. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
So, Mr. Mayor and council members, what we would do then to make this, facilitate this, we would also do a direct mailing to all the abutting property owners, and then maybe we could do a public hearing notice in the newspaper as well to get the people that are not directly abutting. We'll, at least between Lisa and I, we can figure out how to notify people and try to get something happening here sooner than later.
Even if it is a night, whatever night works for pretty much anybody, whatever works, just let's make sure I get it done as soon as possible.
Okay.
Okay. Do you need a motion on anything on that?
Yes, a motion to call for a stakeholders meeting and to direct staff to do so.
Okay, okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, first and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, where are we? Okay, we're on the new business. Historic Preservation District, who would like to speak?
Mr. Mayor, I can speak to that. Item 8A, the Friends to Restore St. Mary's has approached the city requesting that the city in place a moratorium prohibiting any changes or use to the church block to protect the building from damage, and B, develop a historic district around the church block. Mr. Demick and I have met on this and discussed it, and maybe Mr. Demick can speak to that in detail, and then from there, we would ask for action of the council accordingly.
Yeah, when the request came in, I just did some preliminary research as to, well, what does this look like? I mean, how would you go about doing this? Did not do an exhaustive study, just, as a preliminary, and what you would be doing is amending your zoning ordinance. That's where you've got the authority. So you would, you've got residential districts and commercial districts and industrial districts. We've got the floodway, like an overlay district. create a historic district. And, you know, there are other communities that have done it. We could see what they've done, but you would be amending your zoning ordinance and establishing additional regulations. In looking at that, the one example that popped up easy is the state of Minnesota has established 25 historic districts. These are state historic districts created by the legislature. They identified them, and in the state historic districts, and what first caught my mind is, you know, they define, well, what is a historic district? And at the state level, you know, they said, well, a historic district describes, you know, it's an area with a number of structures, sites, spaces together that have historic significance. And so my first concern is, you know, going off of the state example, we don't have a number of structure sites, and we've got basically one structure, two if you count the parish house. We got one site. Some of the examples referenced another, you know, where they use their whole downtown or a whole street. We've got one block. And so my first question is, well, do we have an historic site? You know, that's on, the federal government says yes. You know, they've made it one. But a site is not a district. You know, a district has a number of sites, and I don't know if that really fits. I also got a chance then to look at, in reviewing some of the information, you know, that we just went through with the CUP and the variance, and reviewed that RULIPA, you know, which puts restrictions on, you know, how cities can enforce their zoning ordinances against churches. And, you know, we're walking right back into that question, because we've got a historic district that we're creating that has one property owner. You know, it's not like you made a historic district out of downtown and you've got 40 property owners. We got one property owner that owns the whole district, and that's the church, and that immediately brings in this RLIPA questions. Finally, I did get a chance to read the opinion that the judge issued on the lawsuit that the Friends had against the church, and in that opinion, the judge based it basically on First Amendment grounds, and, you know, having the state, the city, in this case, becoming excessively entangled in church matters. And, you know, I didn't review all the cases the judge was relying on, what the reasoning was in the cases, but at first blush, you know, that's another thing we would have to be concerned about. Are we stepping into, you know, an excessive entanglement where we've already had a local judge saying, don't go there, and we're not going to go there? Do you have yes, you certainly have the authority if you want to create a historic district and add that to the zoning ordinance. The council has that authority. I've got reservations about having a historic district that involves only one property owner. If you were going to do it, I think we need to have something more than just one property and one site. We'd have to look at how do you expand it to include more property, and then what's the justification for doing that. So that's my 2 cents based on a short amount of research. I didn't want to put a lot of time in until I got some direction from the council as to what direction you wanted to go. I'll take any questions from the council.
Tony? Justin?
Any questions?
No, I don't really have any questions.
Okay.
Sounds sounds like kind of a dangerous proposition at this point. Probably earlier on would have been a great idea to create something citywide if we had concerns of historic buildings. Obviously, it's probably going to draw a lawsuit if something like that went forward. Don't know that the taxpayers need to have a lawsuit on their hands. It would be nice if there was some type of compromise between everybody involved outside of these chambers. If there could be some possible way that maybe the building could stay standing. It is very historic. It means a lot to the community as a whole. And I think that would be a really neat compromise if some way that could be accomplished. Everybody's got their heels dug in fairly deep, I think, and it'd be nice if people started conversing and get some dialogue going, so.
Okay. Justin?
I have nothing more to really add to that.
Travis, I know you're new. Do you?
I agree with Tony, I guess. I don't have anything to add to that, though.
Well, the only thought that comes to my mind is I understand the reason for keeping the church. I mean, it's a very unique structure. It has a lot of history. If it ends up getting torn down, we'll never see another structure like this built in Melrose. Even though there's going to be a new church, or if there is a new church built, we'll never see a structure like that. So it is kind of sad to see something of that nature lost. And as Tony mentioned, maybe there is a compromise yet down the road. I don't know. But my question would be is that if we do create this historical, if we did create that historical area, what happens to an empty building? I mean, there isn't any plan as far as restoration of that by the people that want to restore it. Where are you going to get the money to maintain it, or whatever it happens? Or does it just sit there until it falls down? You know, it takes money to restore it, so to keep the building empty and standing with that as it is, I don't think that's what we want. So I don't think that's what we'll get. And I think in the long term, it's going to sit there empty, and sit there empty, and sit there and become an eyesore and fall down. So if there was a plan that maybe the members from the Restore the Church would have, and I know in the beginning you had a plan to restore it with insurance money, but it doesn't look like that's going to take place. So where is the money going to come to do anything with the building? That's just going to be an empty building. So that I don't, like I say, I hate to see the building lost, but I hate to see an empty building sit there until it falls down and become an eyesore. To create a district, I think there should be a plan from the other side. So at this point, I don't see a plan, so I don't see the need for a district. My opinion. But I hate to see the building go down. It's a unique building.
I think this would have been easier if we weren't talking about a burnt structure. I mean, to put an ordinance on something like this now is really hard.
Well, I'm not going to give a 10-minute speech again. I guess I did visit, I visited with you, Marilyn. I visited with Jerry Ossendorf, and Father and I, we got together, and I shared an idea that, that there was some strong interest, and I hope you just bring it back, what I told you, to the bishop. I know how it is. I understand and I respect that. I just, hopefully, at least it could just be thrown around. There's always ideas, but it's tough for me. I mean, it really is, but I have to look as the mayor would, when I took that oath to uphold the Constitution of the state of Minnesota and the United States too. It's hard for me to say that, I'm sure I would love to do it, but I can't see it for the city to put us at such risk for that. I sure hope that there's a compromise somewhere, and I think that if there was something, I think great things could happen, but like I said, I'm still healing myself on this whole deal, and I just can't, as much as I'd like to support this, I can't. I just can't. If it was before the fire, I could have been 100% on board. Maybe before the lawsuit was over, maybe there might have been a chance. But now that the courts have spoken and our attorney has spoken, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. So that's where I'm at. So I would really, truly hate to see something like that go too. But I have to let the leadership of the church figure that out, as I, as mayor, have to figure out what has to be done in the city of Melrose. So hopefully, like I said, Father, you can bring that ideas that I had up, to everybody, but, you have to go from there. So this is where I'm at, and now council, what would you like to do?
I'll make a motion for option 3, stand by the abatement.
Option 3 is stand by the abatement agreement with St. Mary's and the resolution that the city pass relating to historical places and take no other action is option 3. So Justin made a motion for that. Do I have a second? I will second that motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion is carried. Still on new business B, 2019 meeting schedule. Do we have any conflicts with anybody on this?
Should be fine.
But also, Travis and Bunker, we usually meet on the third Thursdays of the month, but we will meet on the first Thursday of the month for the appointments. That's usually the shortest meeting of the year.
No,
Most of the, so just be aware of that, and everybody should get a list of the scheduled dates. Otherwise, is there any other troubles with that? Okay, then we'll be good on that. Critical incident policy. You need to touch base on that, Craig?
Basically what we put before you, Mr. Mayor and the council, is revision to what our use of force policy was. What this does is it defines what can be a critical incident, which includes use of deadly force or anything in between there. And it does give myself more discretion on how long our officers are going to be out for an incident, or when they should be coming back or should not be coming back. Our previous policy was until the investigation was complete, which for this last situation was 3 weeks. Very quick turnaround, comparatively speaking, to a lot of these situations. But after speaking with Mike, working with the city's attorneys and those sorts of things, we felt that our officer could have came back sooner. Our last policy protected the city much more, but I believe that working with this revision and with this new policy, we can still keep the city protected, as well as getting officers back into a working schedule and back on a duty if they're ready to come back.
And so, Mr. Mayor and Council, this policy basically mirrors Stearns County policy. We had multiple policies. It was awkward, to say the least, I would say, when we had an officer that was still at home and the other officer was back to work and the guy was totally in the right. So we just want to have that flexibility to bring the person back to work when we can.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there was 11 different agencies that we consulted with just in our area, let alone some from the league and whatever else, and it was,
Okay.
most of them are pretty uniform, so we're comfortable with this.
Okay, do we have to vote on that at all?
Yes.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve this, please?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, first and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Water tower lights.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, on a much lighter, pun intended, conversation, sorry. The Melrose water tower lights, the Public Utility Commission is in need of replacing the water tower lights because they're standard lights, and we want to change them out to LEDs to be more energy efficient. And so the commission is considering a creative solution here, as well as a community solution to make a unique feature in Melrose. As we all seen, we've seen these water towers and bridges and the buildings that have a colored light on it that will change, you know, for special events, Dutchman Day or Easter or the mayor's birthday, whatever that might be, you could change the color accordingly, or the 4th of July. And so the commission has agreed to fund 50% of that project, which is over and above the cost to replace their LED lights. So the commission has asked the council to consider funding the other 50% of that cost, or less any type of fundraising that we could do to help offset those costs. The sticker price for this, it's not cheap, by no means. It's about to do LED lights with multi-colors. We'd also be able to control it remotely and do time changes on it, nothing fancy like Las Vegas. You would be able to change those lights accordingly. Roger Abelsgaard as well as Tim Vogel have looked at alternative options here for us, and we came up with like 4 different scenarios, excuse me. And the most reasonable quote, which was the best quote we felt, was about $16,460 per water tower. So it's not cheap, but at the same time, it's something unique. I know for a fact that the water tower in St. Cloud, they did it for $70,000. And we're able to do ours because we're doing it a lot more efficient than what they did, and we didn't turn it into Las Vegas. So the total cost is about $32,920. This price is good through the end of this calendar year. After that, the tariffs go into effect, and it goes up about 15%. So the question before the council tonight is, are you willing to potentially fund upwards of up to 50%? I have submitted a request to the Lions. I will be submitting a request to the VFW as well as the Legion to see if they're willing to maybe chip in $1,500, $2,000 to offset that cost of the city portion. So, pending your questions, again, we're trying to do something fun, something unique, something that would set Melrose apart, and I think our water towers have really drawn a lot of positive attention. So it's something different, something fun, and so we just wanted to throw it out there and see what you think.
You might mention too that just
Payback.
by replacing the lights with LEDs is approximately $6,200 per tower. So if you took that dollar value off the $32,000 or the $16,460, you know, the difference is it's $22,304. So about $11,000 difference as far as added cost compared to just replacing them with the LEDs. So
Some long-term power savings?
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's what Councilmember Christensen was referencing there. We go from a 600-watt bulb, go from a 2,000-watt bulb down to a 600-watt bulb. So those numbers, that's a big change. That's a big energy savings. So.
And let me see.
$440 a year.
What's that?
$440 a year.
Yep.
By the looks of it.
Okay.
These types of fun items would be really nice if there was some pretty big community support, independent. I know a lot of people look for things to donate to, causes to donate to. Seems like kind of an interesting idea. Maybe we could, partner, as it says in there, but leave the bulk of it to fundraising. I mean, it's $32,000 for 6 light bulbs.
Well, it's more than that. It's a computer system and a.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean, but it's, boils down to 6 light bulbs, so.
So really what we're asking for is we're asking for the council to commit up to $16,460, but then allow us to, shake the money tree out there and see if we can get a couple of donations to make this work. So, but again, you would be obligated up to 16.4 if we strike out.
Yep. Okay.
Oh, because they want to go forward and do it.
What's that?
Yeah, so we can't just say, well, we'll support up to $5,000 of it.
Right, well, then what would happen is then the commission would just do the standard white LEDs.
Right.
I think if they're gonna replace them regardless next year, this is definitely something to look at, because you do see a lot of this, and it does.
It's fun, different.
It does set, we're illuminating these towers already, like.
Yeah. But I don't know that it has to happen. This tariff thing is gonna be temporary, we think. But the 15%, I don't know, the actual cost of the bulbs themselves, or.
That's just what the sales rep said.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably the only thing that's coming from China. I'm guessing the computer packet doesn't come from China, so.
I'll make the motion to approve it and try to do as much fundraising as possible for it. So,
I'll second it.
there's first and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried.
Maybe we could ask for a raise of hand, who wants to throw in a buck or two?
Well, maybe just ask the people out here, would you be interested in, what's your thoughts?
No.
No?
I think we could take $2,000, buy a bunch of maple trees around the area, and you get a miniature St. John, and that do more for your tours than lighting up the water towers.
Okay.
I could turn the lights on church steeples.
Yeah.
That attracts people.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We're on the informational items, schools and conferences.
Community Development Director went to a redevelopment conference on Greenfield for disaster recovery effort for wetlands. Government Tessa went to a Finance Directors Conference, MPCA audit, local governments, as well as, so she can become a better auditor for us. And that's all I got.
Yep. And then Utility Commission meeting minutes. Unless there's anything else, can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Meeting adjourned.